So the next series of techniques in these 11
Donc, la série suivante de techniques dans ces 11
are part of the exchanging self for others.
fait partie de l'échange du salut avec
And these are said to be the most powerful.
Et ça, il est dit que c'est le plus puissant.
This is all the teachings where you learn about Tonglen,
Et ça, ce sont tous les enseignements où on entend parler de
you know,
Tonglen.
much more dramatic.
C'est beaucoup plus dramatique.
Pabonka Rinpoche says you've got to be a suitable vessel to practice this level of the teachings. You know.
Pabonka Rinpoche dit que vous devez être un véhicule approprié pour pratiquer ce type d'enseignement.
You know, it seems to me emptiness seems more difficult, but I've got a feeling these teachings and bodhicitta are more difficult. I don't know. They're pretty intense.
Moi, il me semble que, et en général on dit que la vacuité est plus compliquée, mais moi, il me semble que peut-être ces enseignements sur bodhicitta sont plus complexes. C'est vraiment intense.
You know, when you read about the bodhisattvas, when you hear their behavior, I mean, on the one side, we like to hear about, oh, love, compassion, sounds lovely, but you hear the intensity of the level of compassion and love and bodhicitta, it's just outrageous, you know.
Et parce que quand vous entendez et parler de la vie des bodhisattvas, et vous l'entendez raconter, parce que d'un côté, bon, on adore entendre raconter des histoires d'amour et de compassion, mais si vous lisez vraiment et ce qu'ils vivent et leur comportement et leurs histoires, et l'intensité de leur amour et de leur compassion est absolument incroyable.
You know, Geshe Sopa, as he said, bodhisattvas need their enemies.
Et comme Geshe Sopa le dit, les bodhisattvas ont besoin de leurs ennemis.
They're like, that's the object that will just shatter the self-cherishing.
Et parce que leurs ennemis vont être l'objet qui va briser en morceaux leur chérissement.
You know, there's this one text, I'm sure, you know, we all know about it. It's simply called the 8 verses, you know, the 8 verses.
Et il y a ce texte qu'on connaît tous qui s'appelle simplement les 8 versets.
You know, on the face of it, really simple words.
Et donc, si vous le lisez, des mots très simples.
Not complicated like emptiness,
C'est pas compliqué comme la vacuité.
but quite outrageous advice.
Et, mais des conseils
You know,
assez presque outrageants, choquants.
I mean, the second verse says something like this.
Le second verset dit quelque chose de semblable à...
When you're with others,
Quand vous êtes avec les autres,
see yourself as the lowest of all.
voyez-vous vous-même comme le plus bas de tous.
Now, that's bad enough.
Ça, c'est comme si c'était...
Hear the words.
Et entendez les mots.
See yourself as the lowest of all.
Voyez-vous vous-même comme le plus bas de tous.
I joke, but I'm serious.
Et je blague, mais je suis sérieux.
But if you had a therapist in the West
Parce que si vous alliez voir un thérapeute
and they advised you to do that,
et qu'il vous conseillait de faire cela,
you could sue them.
vous pourriez lui faire un procès.
That's like monstrous advice.
Et c'est comme un conseil monstre.
And it's monstrous advice only because we are at such intense levels of suffering because of attachment.
Mais c'est un conseil monstrueux simplement parce que nous sommes à un niveau si intense de souffrance à cause du niveau de notre attachement.
But not only is this Langri Tangpa, this amazing 11th century, whoever he was, 11th century yogi, advising us to do, not only see ourselves as the lowest of all, but the next line says, and see everyone else as supreme.
Et non seulement Langri Tangpa,
Which is sort of implied.
Et qui a écrit ces 8 versets au XIe siècle, je crois, et non seulement nous conseille-t-il de nous voir nous-mêmes comme le plus bas de tous, mais dans le vers suivant, la ligne suivante, il nous dit du fond du cœur, je tiendrai les autres pour chers et suprêmes.
As Pabonka Rinpoche says,
Et comme le dit Pabonka Rinpoche,
this level of advice,
ce niveau de conseil,
you need to be a suitable vessel.
il faut que vous soyez un véhicule approprié pour le recevoir.
So this is the point I was making before.
Et ça, c'est l'idée que je faisais passer auparavant.
We've got to understand all these teachings are at levels.
Et il nous faut comprendre que tous ces enseignements correspondent à des niveaux différents.
Levels of capability.
Des niveaux de capacité.
We know that when it comes to music, cooking, mathematics and everything else.
Et nous savons bien cela quand il s'agit de cuisine, de mathématiques et tout le reste.
But when it comes to spiritual advice, we tend to see it all as equal, you know.
Mais quand il s'agit de conseils spirituels, on a tendance à voir comme égal.
But love and compassion are more advanced.
Mais l'amour et la compassion sont plus avancés.
And this is the most advanced.
Et là, il s'agit des plus avancés.
So who would be a suitable vessel to hear that instruction appropriately?
Donc, qui serait un véhicule approprié pour entendre cette instruction de manière appropriée?
A person who's accomplished some level of the wisdom wing.
Eh bien, une personne qui a accompli un certain niveau de l'aile de la sagesse.
Who's already got and has already done masses of work on the compassion wing.
Et qui a déjà fait une quantité de travail sur l'aile de la compassion.
You controlled your body. You controlled your speech. You understand karma intimately. You've done masses of purification. You've got concentration. You know your mind intimately. You understand the delusions of the problem. You own them 100%. Own them 100%. Just from that work alone, you're a really profound practitioner. Deeply understanding suffering and its causes. Really already very mature. A grown up. Happily taking on, happily accepting karma, you know. And now doing equanimity. Seeing your kindness of the mother. Wanting to repay their kindness. All of this, really, that's a suitable vessel. And you got to this level where now you really want to put atomic bombs under self-cherishing. Already you're a brave practitioner. Because normally, if you're an ordinary person, like most of us, haven't done even much wisdom wing work, blame our sister, blame the mother, blame the boss, blame everybody else, normal behavior. And yes, they have been horrible to us, no one's arguing. And especially if we're in this dynamic relationship and we are feeling already the lowest of all. In a deluded way, because of attachment, and this sister bullies us, to this level of practice, to hear that when I'm with her, the advice is, see myself as low. See her as supreme. Too weird. Can't get it. Too strange. Don't know what to do with that. So then don't do it. Don't touch it. Don't go anywhere near it. Leave it there. We're not capable. But at least if we've heard the teachings, and we can understand it theoretically, like you've studied some music, and you see a grade 12 piece, at least you can hear it theoretically. You're not capable yet. That's already pretty good. So if you even hear that advice, understand where it fits. Not ready for that yet, but may I be able to eventually. That's pretty good. But if you suddenly read Buddhist teachings for the first time, you know, and you're overwhelmed by your bully boyfriend, hate yourself, depressed, and you hear that advice, you'll think, these maniacs, who are they? You know? I already see myself as the lowest of all. What do you want to do? You know, these teachings in that little tiny cute little set of 8 verses, they were kept secret. I'm not surprised. Are you kind of hearing me? So who is the person who's capable of doing that? A blissfully clear person who's understanding karma, understands delusions, got control over their mind, is already an incredible practitioner, has incredible, you know, already has got so much, you know, equanimity and understanding of sentient beings and suffering and the whole. That's the person who's then qualified to begin to even consider thinking like that.
Et qui déjà a une équanimité incroyable et a une compréhension de la souffrance et tout ça. Et donc, cette personne, oui, va être capable de penser ainsi.
So then let's hear it in, how would you apply it practically in your daily life?
Mais donc maintenant, entendons comment vous pourriez appliquer ceci pratiquement dans
It says, when you're with others. It doesn't say one person. It says others. Meaning every time, you know.
Il dit en compagnie des autres. Il n'est pas dit d'une personne, mais des autres. Donc, tout
See yourself as the lowest of all.
Et voyez-vous vous-même comme le plus bas.
And all of them
Et tous
as supreme.
Considérez-les comme suprêmes.
So that's a highly evolved person.
Et donc ça, c'est une personne et hautement évoluée.
So the best I can come up with of how to apply this in practical terms in our daily life.
Et donc le mieux et que je puisse dire, c'est que si je dois appliquer cela et de manière pratique.
And you could do this with your sister, if you're brave enough.
Oui,
all of us.
C'est brave. Nous pouvons tous le faire avec notre sœur.
In your private little mind.
Et dans notre petit esprit, mais de manière privée.
Think of one thing that she can do that's better than what in the same thing. One thing about her that's better than you.
Donc même chose intérieurement, pensez à une chose qu'elle peut faire mieux que moi.
That's profound already, isn't it?
Ça c'est déjà profond, non?
You know, maybe her ears are cuter. Something so simple.
Et peut-être que ses oreilles sont plus jolies que les miennes. Non, mais c'est quelque
You know,
chose de simple à trouver.
maybe her breasts are nicer.
Et peut-être que sa poitrine est plus belle.
Maybe she's got a cuter nose. And I'm really meaning something as simple as this.
Et peut-être qu'elle a un plus joli nez. Et je veux vraiment dire
You know,
quelque chose d'aussi simple que ça.
maybe she's a better driver. Maybe she drives a car better.
Peut-être qu'elle conduit mieux.
I mean, anything. Think of one thing
Pense à une chose
that she can do better than
qu'elle
you.
peut faire mieux que toi.
That's a good start. That's a profound practice.
Eh ben, ça, c'est un bon.
Do you understand? Can you hear that?
C'est une pratique profonde. Tu comprends?
You don't have to tell her.
Tu n'as pas besoin de lui
You
dire.
don't tell anybody else. Keep it private.
Garde ça privé.
But sort of sneak it in there, you know.
Et afin que
Open the door.
tu ouvres la porte et ça commence à entrer.
That's applying that.
Et ça, c'est appliqué.
Then maybe one day
Et puis peut-être-
it'll be for everybody.
Et ce sera pour tout le monde.
And you see people who are sort of, they say the bodhisattvas, or even people we know ourselves who people always say, oh, they're a bodhisattva. Like there's this friend of ours called Harry. I'll tell you a story about Harry. It's a very powerful story about bodhicitta. But this fellow we all know is called Harry. You know Harry. And everybody says, oh, Harry's a bodhisattva. Harry's a bodhisattva.
Et donc, on voit des gens, et il y a des gens dont tout le monde va dire, oh, lui, c'est un bodhisattva. Nous, on a un ami qui s'appelle Harry.
And when you're with him, you just know he's like that.
Et quand vous êtes avec lui, et en quelque sorte, vous savez qu'il est comme ça.
So when we hear a person who sees themselves as the lowest of all,
Et donc, quand vous entendez parler d'une personne qui se voit comme le plus bas,
we see a really self-piteous, miserable, depressed person, you know.
nous imaginons une personne vraiment déprimée,
I'm the lowest of all.
et auto-apitoyée, et qui se flagelle.
But he's not like that. He looks like Father Christmas.
Il a l'air du Père Noël.
He's got a big beard. Maybe he's thinner now these days, people say. I don't know. Maybe he's a bit thinner now. I thought he's a big beard. He's like he's tall, fat, and he's this beaming, funny, jolly fellow.
Et puis, il est vraiment ce gars
Honestly.
rayonnant et drôle.
But everybody adores him.
Et tout le monde l'adore.
Everybody who knows Harry always feels like they're his best friend.
Et tous les gens qui connaissent Harry ont toujours la sensation qu'ils sont son meilleur ami.
So the story I'll tell you, it seems to me to prove he is a bodhisattva. I'll tell you later.
L'histoire que je vais vous raconter et semble prouver qu'il est effectivement un bodhisattva.
So what we do is we tend to sort of take people like that for granted. That's just how they're born, you know, what to do, you know.
Et donc, ce que nous faisons, nous, c'est que nous avons tendance à prendre ces gens pour un peu acquis et comme si eux, c'était inné, qu'ils sont nés comme ça.
And in fact, he is a meditator.
En fait, lui,
He's got a cave up there, up in Laudo, near Lamazopa.
il a une grotte et là-haut, à Laudo, près de l'endroit de l'Amazon.
You know, so we can deduce that he's been doing all these things we've been talking about,
Et donc, on peut en déduire qu'il a fait toutes ces choses dont on a
internalizing all these things.
internalisé toutes ces
So there's the proof of the pudding.
Et donc là, c'est la preuve de la recette.
You say that in French, the proof of the pudding? Oh, okay, there's the result.
Bon,
But not like sort of some holy person walking around, you know, looking holy.
mais bon, c'est pas une personne qui a l'air d'une personne sainte et qui marche là avec
Or even like sort of like some kind of, you know, spacious yogi like Lamazopa.
ou un yogi très spacieux comme la Mazopa,
Or some sort of charismatic and powerful like His Holiness.
ou quelqu'un de puissant et charismatique comme ça.
Because everyone's got different personalities, you know.
Bon, et nous avons tous des personnalités différentes.
He's a layman.
Et lui est laïque.
He's just like a jolly, happy fellow, like Father Christmas.
Et donc c'est vraiment un gars et, souriant et heureux et content.
When you go to teachings,
Et quand il va
you kind of notice he's always sitting at the back in the corner.
et vous remarquerez qu'il est tout
But not looking like, oh, I'm sitting in the corner, I'm humble. Not like that.
au fond dans le coin, mais pas avec l'air de oh regardez, je suis assis au fond.
You notice he does the dishes, he's sweeping the floor. He just kind of, he just sort of, he's just kind of there. But it's amazing, you know.
Il fait la vaisselle, il nettoie le sol, et il est là, simplement, et c'est incroyable.
Now, His Holiness says when he's with other people, he really does feel that they're his best friend. He says that.
Et sa sainteté dit que quand il est avec d'autres personnes, eh bien, sa sainteté ressent vraiment que les personnes sont ses meilleurs amis.
Everybody, I know different times I've interviewed, different times that we did, when I worked for Mandela, we did, you know, I did interviews with people about being around the Dalai Lama, you know.
Et ça m'est arrivé plusieurs fois quand je travaillais pour Mandala de faire des interviews de personnes qui avaient pu rencontrer sa sainteté, le Dalai Lama.
Everybody talks the same way.
Et tout le monde raconte la même expérience.
I remember in '96, His Holiness was in Sydney, in Australia, for like a couple of months. He did colour chakra there.
Et je me souviens en 96, sa sainteté était pendant plusieurs mois à Sydney, en Australie, à donner l'initiation de Kala Chakra.
And we did a special issue of Mandala about the big event.
Et donc, on avait fait un numéro spécial de Mandala sur ce grand
You know,
événement.
I think FPMT invited.
Que je crois la FPMT avait organisé.
So everyone I talk to,
Et tous
the police who are his guard, you know,
j'en ai parlé,
the press,
les policiers,
the workers, everybody had talked in the same way.
travaillaient pour l'événement, tout le monde, et on parlait de la même façon.
I remember in 1982 we did when His Holiness came to Europe was for almost the first time. It wasn't quite the first time, was it? It wasn't. No, he'd been a couple of times before. 82.
Et je me souviens qu'en 82, quand sa sainteté est venue, c'était une des premières fois qu'il venait en Europe.
And I remember Lama had just got Nalanda Monastery.
Et je me souviens que Lama, et donc on venait d'accueillir.
Lama was one of the benefactors.
Et Lama était un des.
And he invited 10 of us Westerners to be security guards for His Holiness.
Et était un des organisateurs de la tournée et a invité 10 d'entre nous, des Occidentaux, pour que nous soyons les gardes du corps de
5 girls and 5 boys.
pendant la tournée. 5 femmes et 5 gars.
And 3 of us were nuns.
Et 3 de nous étions des nonnes.
But he made us wear lay clothes.
Mais il nous a fait porter des vêtements
We had to wear a little uniform, you know.
Et nous avions cet uniforme.
So we went in Italy and in France,
Et donc on a été en Italie, en France.
traveling for about 6 weeks with His Holiness, 5 weeks,
Et voyagé pendant 5 semaines avec sa sainteté.
acting like we're the security guards, you
Et
know.
donc on faisait comme si on était ses gardes du corps. Mais
And I was a nun. I was a nun at the time,
j'étais nonne.
but I had hair. I was wearing lay clothes and living in London.
Et j'avais des cheveux et même à Londres, je portais des vêtements.
So I thought I better look like a proper lady, you know.
Et donc je me suis dit, bon, ben, je devrais avoir l'air.
So I had hair and I wore lipstick.
Et donc j'avais ma chevelure
And I had these nice long maroon boots that I bought in Milano.
et des bottes rouges que j'avais
We had these little skirts, a little blouse.
jupe et des blouses.
You know, we had to wear a little uniform, you know.
Et on devait porter ce petit uniforme.
Lama, yes, she would always look at me and say, I think I like you better like that.
La Maïché me regardait toujours et me disait, je crois que je te préfère comme ça.
So we would travel around with His Holiness on the
Et
aeroplanes,
donc on était dans l'avion avec sa sainteté.
stand outside his door, the hotel door, and guard the door all night, you know.
Et puis on était là devant sa porte, la porte de sa
And I remember at
chambre.
Nalanda,
Et comme
he stayed there for a night.
Et à Nalanda, où il
And I
a
cleaned his room, you know.
une nuit, et moi j'ai nettoyé sa chambre.
Anyway, whatever. So anyway, where was I there? His Holiness. You're just observing over that period, like in Italy, I mean, observing how people responded to him was seeing up close was quite remarkable, you know.
Et pendant cette période avec lui, voir comment les gens répondaient à la proximité avec sa sainteté, le fait de leur
I remember these in Italy, in Spain, he went to some monasteries,
Et en Espagne, il avait visité quelques monastères.
and one very strict one, like the Carthusians, they meditate and pray all day and night, you know.
Et il y en avait un qu'il a visité très strict où il médite et prie toute la journée.
And us girls weren't allowed in.
Et nous, les femmes, on n'a pas eu le droit d'entrer.
And when His Holiness came out
Et quand sa sainteté
with all the monks in their white dresses, you know, looking,
avec leur robe,
and then the boy guards were allowed in, and Lama was there.
et les gardes du corps hommes avaient eu le droit d'aller avec
But they were just like these Catholic monks, just blissful,
Et tous ces moines catholiques
beaming from ear to ear.
avaient un
You know.
sourire d'une oreille à l'autre.
Yeah. These people, I remember the talks, all these people turning up, these middle-aged, kind of respectable Spanish. I remember this Spanish lady with her gloves and her high heels and her handbag, you know, just looked very traditional. She was sort of hungry looking. They're all looking for something. And he touched people's hearts. He moved people. I was amazed to watch it, you know.
Et j'étais vraiment stupéfié de voir à quel point il touchait les gens. Et en Espagne, par exemple, et où il faisait ses conférences, et vous voyez des femmes.
Maybe in Barcelona.
À Barcelone, et entre autres, et un peu bien habillé, avec un petit sac, etc. Et qui était vraiment, et qui l'écoutait.
I remember the couple of Italian terror squad coppers that the Pisa city government had hired to go to Pomaya to guard His Holiness for the 10 days that he was staying there. These young guys with their machine guns, you know. At the beginning, they looked so cynical. He's this weird-looking dude, you know.
Et donc, je me souviens de ces deux types d'un escadron antiterroriste que le gouvernement de Pise avait envoyé à Pomaya où sa sainteté restait pendant 10 jours et qui donc était avec leur mitraillette devant la porte de sa villa et qui au début avait l'air super cynique.
So every day he'd go past them and whack them on the back and say hello and look at them and smile, you know.
Et chaque jour, là, il passait devant eux et puis il leur donnait une tape dans le dos.
But by the end of the 10 days,
après 10 jours,
he had him in the palm of his hand, you know. They just adored him.
Dans la paume de sa main. Il l'adorait.
He didn't seem to do much, His Holiness. He just sort of beamed at people. They all fell in love with him, you know.
Il semblait pas qu'il ait grand-chose à faire, hein. Simplement, il était rayonnant comme ça, et il rayonnait vers les gens, et puis ça faisait son effet.
That seems to be how these, like Harry, I mean, I'm not putting him in the same category, but Harry seems to be, he's got some qualities. He just makes people happy.
Et il semble que ça soit ainsi qu'est sa sainteté. Et donc, je ne mets pas Harry et sa sainteté dans la même catégorie, mais Harry, il semble qu'il a cette qualité.
Lamayeshi was the same. Lamayeshi, he just made people happy, you know.
Et Lamayeshi, c'était la même chose. Lamayeshi, simplement de le voir, les gens étaient heureux.
Lama Zopa, when you meet him in private, people just completely adore him.
Les gens l'adorent.
It's different when you go to his teachings and he's teaching till 3 in the morning, then you're not so happy, you know.
C'est plus dur quand vous devez aller assister à ces enseignements qui durent jusqu'à 3 heures du matin, là vous n'êtes pas si heureux. Mais...
So there's something about these people with their qualities, you know. And what that essentially, what that essentially means is with His Holiness, you know. What that essentially means.
This
is what's hard for us to conceive of in the West. Zero ego grasping. Zero attachment. Anger, depression, anxiety. Not a fraction of that. So there's no barrier between him and everybody else. I mean, we can't conceive of this. We know he's this nice, happy guy. You know, people over the years have heard about the Dalai Lama. And we can see, you know, how he hasn't stopped, like I said, for 60 years, trying to, you know, make things different for Tibet. And it's evident to anybody that he's not angry, not neurotic. But we don't really know what to do with that in the world. It's sort of like accidental. Oh, that's just the Dalai Lama. He's kind of born like that, you know. Whereas if you see Federer play tennis, or whoever is famous in... Have you got any French players? Have you? Got any famous French players? Tennis players? Okay, Tsonga play. You don't just say, oh, he was born like that. You know that's the product of a lot of hard work. And then you go, oh, I'd love to be like that. But we see like a Harry, Dalai Lama, we don't go, oh, I wonder what they did to make them be like that. I think I'd like that. That's how we ought to. And if we are Buddhists, we're attempting to be this way. But in normal world, we just think they're accidents, you know. They're just happy. They're just born like it. So that's a suitable vessel. He's a happy, beaming, happy guy. Harry, just think of Harry, who doesn't appear to have any kind of neurotic needs, doesn't get upset by people, he's not waiting for people to love him. Well, that's a person who can put everybody else, that's a person who can be genuinely humble. See, that's what I find in our world very kind of confusing. If we think humble, we think low self-esteem. If we think self-confident, we think arrogant. That's why I think Dalai Lama is an amazing example. Anyone who's been around him, he's really clear that he's charismatic, he's powerful. He doesn't walk around all kind of, you know, humble like this, you know. But it's evident that he's profoundly humble. But you can be humble and powerful. I like that example. That's for me a very good example.
c'est un très bon exemple.
Because we over-exaggerate. We think humility is low self-esteem.
Parce que nous surexagérons et nous pensons que l'humilité, c'est de la mauvaise estime.
And that self-confidence
Et que la confiance en
is arrogance.
c'est de l'arrogance.
But one is a virtue
Mais dans un cas, il s'agit d'une vertu,
and one's a delusion.
et dans l'autre, il s'agit
We get
d'une
them
illusion.
mixed.
Et on mélange les deux.
And that's how we can easily misunderstand Buddhism.
Et c'est pour ça que nous pouvons facilement
You know,
comprendre.
so imagine giving up attachment,
Donc, imagine
giving up anger,
abandonner l'attachement, abandonner
giving up pride,
abandonner l'orgueil,
you become a creep.
et vous allez devenir un minable.
No, you can still be loud and bossy like the Dalai Lama.
Non, vous pouvez continuer à être à parler fort.
He is very bossy. He's very bossy.
Et lui, il est très autoritaire.
He walks into a press conference.
Il arrive dans une conférence.
Within a minute, he's organising the whole thing.
Et en une minute, il aura tout organisé.
And he's out the door in 5 minutes. They're all going, what happened, you know?
Il est sorti et ils vont tous se dire, mais qu'est-ce qui s'est passé?
He's powerful,
Il est puissant,
but he's humble.
mais il est humble.
So I think it's a great example.
Donc je pense que c'est un grand exemple.
We really misunderstand humble.
Et parce que nous avons vraiment cette méprise. Quand
Humble means there's no arrogance. Humble means you're content in who you are.
Humble, ça veut dire qu'il n'y a pas d'arrogance. Humble, ça veut dire que vous
Therefore, you're
êtes
self-confident.
avec qui vous êtes et donc que vous avez confiance en vous-même.
If you've got low self-esteem,
Si vous avez une mauvaise
now this is depressing for us. You hear this though.
et ça, cependant, c'est déprimant.
Low self-esteem
La mauvaise estime,
is the flip side of pride.
eh ben, c'est l'autre facette de l'orgueil.
And low self-esteem is one of our favorite delusions.
Et la mauvaise estime de soi-même, et c'est une de nos délusions favorites.
It's because we're arrogant.
Simplement parce que nous sommes arrogants.
When you've got low self-esteem,
Quand vous avez une mauvaise estime,
you think everybody else is better than you.
vous pensez que tous les autres sont mieux que vous.
Actually, we are resentful. How dare they be better than me? I'm the lowest of all.
C'est du ressentiment que nous ressentons. Et comment ose-t-il être meilleur que
It is
moi?
a fact
Et c'est un fait.
that if you did not have arrogance, you would not have low self-esteem. It would be impossible.
Nous n'aurions pas de mauvaise estime de
You'd be
nous-mêmes.
content in who you are.
C'est possible. Vous seriez content avec qui vous
This
êtes.
is hard to hear.
Et ça, c'est dur à entendre.
We never think we're arrogant.
Parce que nous ne pensons jamais que nous sommes
We
arrogants.
all think we've got low
Nous
self-esteem.
pensons tous que nous avons une
It's
mauvaise
an over-exaggeration of your status.
C'est une surexagération de votre
So
statut.
sometimes you think you're the worst person in the world.
Parfois, vous allez penser que vous êtes la pire personne.
Oh, I'm more miserable than you.
Oh, je suis pire.
No, you're not. I'm the worst.
Non, non, je t'assure, je suis le pire.
It's deflated pride.
Et en fait, c'est de l'orgueil dégonflé.
This is really hard to look at,
Et ça, c'est très dur de le
but it's
voir.
necessary.
Mais c'est nécessaire.
So see people as lowest of all. See yourself. Just using, like I said, one example, one time, one thing about one person that's better than you at that.
Donc, voyez-vous vous-même.
Good
comme
practice
vous
of
avez
it.
tous.
Powerful.
Et comme je l'ai dit, et faites simplement une chose avec une personne et trouvez une chose où elle est meilleure que vous. C'est puissant déjà.
It's easy to say, oh, may I see myself as the lowest of all. You don't know how to practice it, you know. It just sounds like a nice idea.
Et c'est facile de dire, oh, puissais-je me voir moi-même comme le plus bas de tous. Et ça sonne comme une bonne idée. Mais après, comment est-ce qu'on le pratique, ça?
Yes. Yeah. So then the three of the verses,
Ensuite,
You know,
trois des versets
they each get, they're the way to see others,
sont la façon dont on va voir les autres,
the negative people.
les gens négatifs.
So the first one is like distant out there. It seems like when you read about all the, you know, it's, as it says in the text, this verse says, when you see, and I mean, I'm sure in 11th century Tibet you might have seen one mean person every now and again. You know, you don't have newspapers, there's no television, you didn't have, you know, it's like you'd see, maybe you'd hear about some wacky people occasionally. So when you hear about or know a person who's evil, it says, I mean, we just don't use that word, you know, evil, who's overwhelmed by negativity and suffering, then you see that person as your, I wish I had the copy, but there's three different levels. One is precious, the next one is, have you got them there? En français? There's three. One is all the people out there. They're the closer to home, how you're going to see them, and then the closest one is your guru. So what, the first one is what? What's the?
quand je vois des êtres d'un naturel méchant, accablés par de violentes...
To say it, what is it? See them as what?
Je saisirai ces êtres rares
In English, please.
Un trésor précieux.
In English, please.
When I see evil beings...
what's my view? The last line.
Precious treasure.
The precious treasure. What's the next one? I view them as what? Next
si
one.
par jalousie d'autres me maltraitent par des injures, des insultes et autres malveillants, j'accepterai
la défaite et leur offrirai la victoire.
Offer the victory to them, and the third one is see as my guru. Okay, that's fine. Thank you. So it's sort of like the first one is way out there.
Donc, dans le premier verset là qu'on va évoquer,
when you read about this,
les gens sont là-bas au loin, et comme bon, on peut imaginer quand
you read about, you hear about.
Et au XIe siècle au Tibet, bon, il n'y avait pas de journaux, etc.
As it says, evil.
Donc, vous entendez parler.
I'd say, no, don't read it. I don't want you to read it. I would say, we would say the psychopaths.
Et nous, on dirait les psychopathes.
So we hear about psychopaths all the time, don't we?
Nous, on entend parler de psychopathes.
It's not like you meet one once a year or you hear about them in a distant village, you know.
Et c'est pas comme si vous en rencontriez un une fois par an ou que vous entendiez parler dans un village distant d'un psychopathe.
So how am I going to think about this person?
Donc, qu'est-ce que je vais penser de cette personne?
As a precious treasure.
Eh ben, on me conseille.
You think, excuse me, read that again. What did you say?
Un trésor précieux. Donc, on va dire, mais
why in the name of God should I see this wacko as a precious treasure? Doesn't make sense in worldly terms.
Et pourquoi est-ce que je devrais voir ce psychopathe, ce fou, comme un trésor précieux? Ça n'a pas de sens.
Okay, the point of this, all these verses is this, and this takes us time to get.
Mais l'idée de tous ces versets est la suivante, et ça prend du temps de le comprendre.
In these verses, what we're trying to, here at this level, what we are trying to accomplish
à ce niveau, ce qu'on essaye d'accomplir,
is bodhicitta.
C'est la bodhicitta.
Using the particular approach called exchanging self for others.
En utilisant cette approche particulière appelée s'échanger.
Or they call it also lojong. Or the whole genre of practices is called lojong.
Donc tout cet ensemble de pratiques sont appelées lojong.
Mind training.
Entraînement d'esprit.
The whole of the path is mind training.
En fait, tout le chemin.
But it's this particular approach, this most advanced approach of developing love and compassion, and therefore bodhicitta.
Mais cette approche particulière et cette approche la plus avancée pour.
So this is the point. If you want to be the best doctor.
Donc l'idée est la suivante. Si vous voulez être le meilleur médecin.
What do you need once you're a doctor? Or you're trying to become the best doctor.
Donc disons que vous essayez de devenir le meilleur.
And you got to practice on people.
Et vous devez pratiquer sur les gens.
What kind of people do you practice on?
Et sur quel type de personnes allez-vous pratiquer?
Hint: sick people or healthy people?
Des gens malades ou des gens sains?
Sick people, right? So if you're going to becoming a doctor, you need sick people, don't you?
Si vous voulez devenir médecin, vous avez besoin de malades.
And if you really want to become a really good doctor fast,
et si vous voulez vraiment devenir un très bon médecin rapidement,
the sicker they are, the better, yeah?
Plus ils seront malades, mieux ce sera.
Would you agree with this? Would you agree with this? So if you're suddenly called to go off into a war zone,
et donc si soudain on vous appelle et on vous demande
and you're learning to be a surgeon,
et d'être chirurgien,
you're really jumping in the deep end, aren't you?
Et alors là, vous allez vraiment
and you'll become an incredibly skillful surgeon, won't you? Very quickly.
Et vous allez devenir un chirurgien incroyable très rapidement.
Are you getting the point here? So this is how they talk.
Et c'est ainsi qu'ils en parlent.
Doctors need really sick people.
Les médecins ont besoin de gens très malades.
Because you want to be the best doctor.
Parce que vous voulez être le meilleur médecin.
Well, bodhisattvas need the wackiest people.
Eh ben, les bodhisattvas ont besoin des pires.
Because we're trying to smash ego grasping, attachment, and self-cherishing.
De faire éclater la saisie de l'ego.
So we all know that if you've got everybody surrounding you who's kind and generous to you and loving,
si tout le monde autour de nous est bon et généreux et aimant,
how can you practice going against anger?
Comment pouvez-vous pratiquer le fait d'aller
The only time you practice going against anger
le seul moment où vous pratiquez d'aller contre la colère,
when someone's mean to you.
c'est quand quelqu'un est méchant.
So it's logical.
Donc c'est
The more mean people, the better. It's logical. That's why you've got to be a suitable vessel, though.
Mais il faut que vous soyez un véhicule approprié.
Bodhisattvas want the wackos.
Les bodhisattvas veulent les psychopathes.
So this is the level of
Et
practice.
donc c'est ça le niveau de pratique.
Now, clearly, if you're not ready to jump in the deep end of a war zone and be a surgeon, keep your knives to yourself.
Et donc clairement, si vous n'êtes pas prêt à sauter dans le grand bassin et à partir pour une zone de guerre, eh bien alors gardez votre scalpel pour...
If you're not capable of hearing about a psychopath and seeing them as a precious treasure to help you get bodhicitta, then don't think about them, please.
Et donc, si vous n'êtes pas capable également de entendre parler d'un psychopathe et de penser à lui comme trésor précieux, eh bien alors...
So the person who's the psychopath... The psychopath is a suffering human being who's harming people terribly. But that level of harmer is the grist for your mill to help you get incredible compassion. The next one, closer to home. And this seems to me this is like at work. When people accuse you of doing things you didn't do, this is the meaning. Like your example of work. What's your attitude to this one? I'll offer the victory to them. I'll take the blame. So using your example of work, you know, if this is the level you're at, you'll be so happy. You'll accept and offer the victory. That's intense. Even when you didn't do anything, even when you did do something wrong, it's hard to take the blame, isn't it? Now, this is dangerous. If you're in a relationship with Nicolas and I'm a victim and he abuses me daily, oh yes, you're right, Nicolas, I'm so bad. That's not taking the blame. That's mental illness. I've got to stand up. Screw you, mate, I'm out of here. So the only person who can truly take the blame and give the victory, again, is a really highly evolved being. So it's according to what your capability is, which is this piece of advice you take. I always tell this nice dinner time. I always tell this nice little story. A friend in Australia at a party, a bunch of Buddhists. And the guy at the party, I don't know, John, his BMW had been scratched, his new BMW. So he fixed it. He fixed it. And he got scratched again. It cost a lot of money, you know. So like 3 times it happened. He discovered it was the wacky old guy next door. No idea why this guy had scratched his door. Obviously he thought he must have done something wrong. And this is the point about our lives. Often we know we did nothing wrong. That's why it's so painful. But that's bad. That's past karma. Her and her sister, mostly past karma. You know? So clearly this guy next door is convinced this guy done something wrong to him, but he's done nothing. Clearly it's past karma, you know?
Et donc, lui était convaincu qu'il avait dû faire quelque chose de mal à son voisin, mais en fait, il avait rien.
So John said, what do I do?
Donc, et il s'est dit, mais qu'est-ce que je peux faire?
So George said, I'll tell you what Lama Zopa would do.
Et George, un autre ami, lui a dit, ben moi, je vais te dire ce que Lama Zopa conseillerait.
He would find out what this old guy liked.
Et il trouverait ce qui plaît à ce vieux.
And buy him a beautiful gift.
Tu lui achètes un cadeau magnifique.
Offer it to him.
Et tu lui offres.
And apologize.
Et tu t'excuses.
John thought it was great.
Et John a trouvé ça super.
So he discovered he liked golf.
Et donc, il a découvert que son voisin aimait le golf.
He bought him these fancy golf balls.
Et il lui a acheté ces jolies balles de golf.
Went to his back door.
Et puis, il est allé par un portail.
Beautifully wrapped, you know, gift.
Il avait un beau paquet.
Offered it to him.
Il lui a offert.
And apologized for anything he'd done wrong.
Et il s'est excusé pour quoi que ce soit qu'il ait pu faire de mal.
He'd done nothing wrong.
Il avait rien.
But he apologized. He took the blame.
Mais il s'est excusé.
He gave the victory.
La faute, il a pris.
So he went back home.
Il lui a offert la victoire.
He's happy, feeling content.
Et il est rentré à la maison.
And this old guy comes, you know, beaming from ear to ear, with his gift open. This is the nicest thing anyone's done for me. And everything is forgiven. Now that's courageous. You know, you read about people who, for the next 27 years, have a war, and neighbours. You know. I think two guys on some rich island, you know, two billionaires. They're like 27 years later, billions of dollars in law things. There's nothing. Over the trash can was an inch over the wrong side or something. It began like that, you know.
Et j'ai lu l'histoire de deux milliardaires sur une île et pendant, je sais pas, 27 ans, et ils se sont fait procès sur procès. Et le début de l'histoire, c'est simplement que la poubelle était peut-être quelques centimètres du mauvais côté.
Take the victory. And the third one, the worst one, the closest to home.
Et le troisième verset, donc,
this is your beloved,
et c'est là que ça,
your child,
plus de tout,
maybe your sister, the ones closest to home.
Et donc, c'est avec les gens
a person for whom and a person you've taken care of,
une personne dont on a pris soin,
whom you've given your life for,
pour qui vous avez donné,
and they go against you.
Et qui se retourne contre vous.
You think of the mothers, I just think of the parents alone, whose children have rejected them. You know.
Pensez à tous ces exemples de parents qui ont été rejetés par leurs enfants.
Can't even bear to think about it. And how will you think about them? Your precious guru. This is pretty intense practice. Emptiness is easy in comparison with this. I'm sorry. This is intense. These are the practices of the Bodhisattva. Quick path to bodhicitta. So you've got to be a suitable vessel. At least read the verses. Think about them. Aspire to be like this one day. Yeah. Dinner time. Okay. So listen, tomorrow is the last day, right? So what time are we supposed to finish? Well, I've got a feeling we just don't muck around having 2 hours of lunch. We just have an hour's lunch and come back in 1:30 and finish at 3:30 or 4 instead of 5. Finish earlier. Yes? Even less early, even more. I mean, we've kind of finished, really. We'll see how we go. Maybe we'll finish at lunchtime. We'll see how we go. And I have to remind you that it's really, we've been here really like 3 weeks. We've been here 3 weeks. Because they've tested it many times that I speak 3 times the pace of everybody else. Okay? No, really, that people have tested it. 3 times, not twice, 3 times. I always quote this silly story. In Brisbane, Miffy there invited 3 of us nuns from Chenrezig Institute to give a 90-minute talk. And she transcribed the 3 talks. And the other 2 nuns were 8 pages. And mine were 24. So then you got your money's worth. Okay.
Thank you. Okay.
Tomorrow at 7 at Nalendo. So John,
oh, is it?
If you'd like to come. All the other nuns come?
No, they're not going. I'm not going.
Oh, okay.